It is time for spooky season reading and I'm so excited. It is the 5th of October today, so 5 days into the month and I haven't yet started a horror book. That changes today. On the TBR for this week, we have got Shirley Jackson's We Have Always Lived in the Castle. This is our tiny book club pick for October, which is a book club where we read tiny books, so this is a tiny book. I'm going to read you the blurb of this one because I've tried to summarise it and the blurb just obviously does a better job given that it's a professionally written thing to summarise a book. Living in the Blackwood family home with only her sister Constance and her uncle Julian for company, Mary Cat just wants to preserve their delicate way of life. But ever since Constance was acquitted of murdering the rest of the family, the world isn't leaving the Blackwoods alone. And when cousin Charles arrives, armed with overtures of friendship and a desperate need to get into the safe, Mary Cat must do everything in her power to protect the remaining family. This is Shirley Jackson's final novel as well. I really enjoyed The Haunting of Hill House. Read that last year. Very atmospheric, very spooky and creepy, and had real build to it. So I am very excited for this one. I think I'm going to start this one today. I finished Thunderhead by Neil Shusterman last night. That ending, that book, that was so good. Anyway, this I think will be my next read. And then I think the other book I want to read this week is Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix. This one doesn't come out until January next year, so thank you so much to the publishers Nightfire for sending this through early. I am very excited about this. I love Grady Hendrix writing so much. I'm very buzzed about this. Again, I'll read you the blurb for this. Sit, listen, I need you to understand what they did to us when we were girls. That's the important thing you have to remember. We were children. They called us fast girls, wayward girls, loose girls. They said the devil had tempted us and we had sinned. But for girls like us, down there at the home, the devil turned out to be our only friend. And even today, I don't regret a thing the devil made us do. So these two books I would like to try and read this week. I also want to pick up a book today if I can. So I'm going to the cinema today and I'm going to a nearby town to go to that cinema because their cinema has reclining seats, our cinema doesn't, and you know, I want to treat myself. And apparently their Waterstones has a copy of this. So it's called We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kleiwer, I think it's pronounced. Apparently they have one copy. I know I could reserve it, but there's something about the excitement of going and try and finding it on the shelves, and if they don't have it, that's absolutely fine. Like, I'll keep it on the kind of not books I own TBR, like the wish list of books, that's the word. But that one sounds very spooky as well. So maybe those 3 books, definitely these 2 books. Do you know what? I'm going book shopping on Wednesday. I was meant to film my horror book shopping in Oxford video last week, but I got ill and it was a logistical nightmare to do, so I'm going to do it this Wednesday instead. And I cannot wait, but also that means I'm going to have loads more horror books to add to my TBR. I always get so overwhelmed with horror in October, but I love it. But this month I'm going away as well, so it kind of changes the way my TBR works a little bit. So it's going to be interesting, but this week I'm all about the horror. Today I am going out with my friends, so I'm not really going to be doing too much reading. Tomorrow I am doing a reading party with my patrons, which is basically an all-day live show. I do these monthly. If you ever want to join, it's available to all tiers of my Patreon. There is a link down below. And then the rest of the week is just a normal week really, so sprints, book shopping, reading in the evenings. I am very excited about this TBR. I do also have a sponsor for this video that I am very excited about. You may have noticed my arts and literature jumper. This is from Joni Clothing, who are sponsoring this part of the video. I love Joni Clothing so much, so this is a very exciting sponsorship for me. I've been buying pieces from Joni Clothing myself for a few years now, and they definitely stand the test of time. I love the design so much, and this year their autumn shop is so good. So many fantastic things for spooky season. I will show you what they have sent me and just tell you a little bit about Joni Clothing. Joni Clothing is a UK-based brand that endeavour to put people and planet first. They try and make clothes that make people happy, and that is exactly what their clothes do. This jumper, it makes me very happy, as do the other pieces they've sent me. They offer an inclusive size range from UK size 8 to UK size 26, and they have so many designs to pick from. Joni Clothing have sent me over some amazing pieces to show you, so many good ones perfect for autumn and spooky season. I love them so much. I have the Scarlet Velvet A-line skirt in black, the Emmy Votes for Women graphic tee, the Egon House of Spirits graphic tee, Gomez Jeepers Creepers graphic tee, and the Alcott Arts and Literature oversized sweatshirt. One of the things I really like about all of these items is the fit on them. Usually when something says oversized, I find it's not actually oversized. I've actually lent into buying a lot more men's clothing because it is actually oversized, but this is actually oversized. This is an actual oversized jumper, everyone. I got the size large and it fits me really nicely. It's really comfortable. It's warm. It's like all fluffy light. It's a really nice jumper. So I love this. All the t-shirts fit really nicely as well. The skirt fits really nicely. I cannot speak highly enough of Joni Clothing. If you would like to check them out, I will leave everything you need linked down in the description. Thank you so much, Joni Clothing, for sponsoring this video. You are literally a dream sponsor. So I just opened up my pre-order of the Moo Music record, and it came with these glasses, which I was kind of thinking, okay, are these 3D glasses? Like, is there something on the artwork that's gonna pop out? Oh my god, I don't know if you're gonna be able to see properly if I put them over the camera lens, but they're called moon goggles, I think they've been called. Coldplay moon goggles. And basically any light you look at, it turns it into a crescent moon. Which is so cool. I'm going to try and show you. Also, this album, so good. So floaty and feels kind of like ethereal almost. It's just really, really good. Every single song in one way or another is just fantastic. I listened to it the other day. I turned off all the lights apart from my pink hue ambient lighting, and I just shut my eyes, I put my over-the-ear headphones on, I laid down, and I just listened to this album, and it was great. Okay, I don't know if this is gonna work. Oh, it does work, look! How cool is that? It's so cool! Anyway, I'm having a great time with these. So I finished We've Always Lived in the Castle. I'm just trying to process my thoughts on this one. This was more of a gothic horror in the sense of like leaning into the uncanny and the unsettling and more of like the psychological element. This is following a very small family who are living in a house quite isolated from their town, and you learn quite quickly that everybody apart from the 3 people living in this house in the family were killed a few years ago in an arsenic poisoning incident. And these are the only 3 left. And one of them has been left really affected by that poisoning and is trying to like recall the events of the day constantly. That's their uncle. And then you've got one sister who has become like the caregiver and is doing all the cooking and looking after the other sister, who we see like she's an adult, but she's almost like trapped in her childhood still and is being treated like that by her sister, and everyone around them in their town is like very wary of them. And you know, it does a lot to isolate the characters from those around them and create them as this kind of unknown presence in this town, and therefore like that kind of feels like that comes across in the writing as well for the reader. Like you get to know them a little bit, but you still are very wary of them, and I think that continues through the story, especially as it kind of unravels. I will say the plot of this, like, this is much more about the atmosphere and the intrigue of these characters and what is not being said than it is about heavy big plot points. I don't know how I feel so much about that. I think I preferred The Haunting of Hill House for sure. I've given this 3.5 out of 5 stars. I did enjoy it. It was very atmospheric, and it definitely felt unsettling and uncanny in the way that I like a good gothic horror too. So, book 1 for the week is finished. I think I'm gonna go on to this one, We Used to Live Here. I said I wanted to pick this up yesterday and I found it. I like the cover of it quite a lot, and a lot of people have said this genuinely scared them, and I am constantly on the search for books that are actually really going to scare me, so I think I'm going to dive into this one next. I very much understand the appeal of wanting to have a look around the home that you grew up in or somewhere that you used to live. I understand the appeal of wanting to do that and the curiosity. However, the reality, if someone arrived at my home, knocked on my door with their children and said they used to live here, and could they come in and have a look around? I mean, I'm a people pleaser. The main character in this book is a self-confessed people pleaser, but I still feel like my answer would be no, because I would feel unsafe and I would have everything going through my head of like what could possibly happen, especially because I live alone. And at the start of this book, the main character is alone when this happens, when a family knocks on her door and asks if they can come in. And at the moment, she's just been like, oh, I'm just gonna go ring my partner and see if they'd be comfortable with this. And I'm just like screaming at this book because obviously like the blurb of this book is that we know that she lets these people in and that they don't leave. We know a partner goes missing and that the one that doesn't go missing starts to lose her like grasp on reality. Like that is all in the blurb. But yeah, I am still like screaming at this book being like, please just don't let these people. Why? No, just don't let them in. You're on your own. You've just moved to the area. It's icy and cold outside. It's every recipe for a horror film waiting to happen, and you are voluntarily letting these people into your home. I mean, it's the sign of a good book, isn't it? Because I'm already invested and I'm only like 4 or 5 pages in, but still. Oh, why? Why has she let them in? Good morning. We are sat right in front of the window today because it is so dark and gloomy out. This is like the only spot I can film in. I am just waiting for my friend to pick me up. We're heading out for the day, and I am getting in a couple more pages of We Used to Live Here. This book is successfully giving me the fear. It's scaring the shit out of me, basically, which is exactly what I wanted. And what I've been searching for years is a book that is consistently scary, not just like a paragraph or a page, but is consistently building that fear and that tension, and this is doing that. I think the kind of things I personally find scary when reading is the suggestion of things that build the tension, the suggestion of what might be there, and then getting little glimpses of that, especially things like creepy people, creatures, figures, generally like, you know, seeing the shadow of something in a basement or seeing a silhouette far off in a forest, that kind of thing. The implication of what's behind that is what builds the tension and the fear for me, and this is doing that kind of vibe really well. I'm intrigued to see how this all knits together, because at the same time as the present day chapters, we also see chapters that are in different formats, so like chapters that are taken from case notes, chapters that are taken from like online web forums, interviews, different things like that are giving us context to random things throughout the story. I'm just not really sure what those random things are yet, so interested to see how that's going to play out. Also interested to see the development of the involvement in this family that are looking around the house and how that pans out as well. I'm having a very good time. I have about 100 or so pages left, and I am very excited to see how it ends. Also, I've predominantly been reading this at night, which I think is really building towards the atmosphere, so it's a great horror pick. I have finished this book, and it was definitely the creepiness that I wanted and needed. I think by the end of this, I very much lost my grip on the reality of the book as well. Everything was being questioned. It felt really intense. It kind of transformed into a different type of horror by the end to the one that I thought it was going to be at the start and the middle. I really liked this. I very much felt I was rooting for the main character, which I think is really important in a horror. If you don't feel invested for the safety and well-being of the main character, I feel like it definitely changes your perception of the horror, of course, unless it's a horror where you're not meant to feel that kind of feeling. But generally, you need someone to root for in a good, suspenseful horror, and I definitely felt I had this. I really enjoyed this. I'm giving this, I'm going to say a 4 to 4.5. This is the book, out of all the books on my shelves, all the horror that I have been reading in recent years, this is the one that has given me the most feeling of the fear, and for that, we put it on a little magical pedestal. I think I can squidge one more book into this vlog, I think. I have two options, the first of which is Dolly by Susan Hill. I got this week. This is following a creepy doll that was given to somebody as a birthday present. It wasn't the right doll, and 40 years later the doll comes back into these people's lives, and it's a ghost story. The cover is creepy. It's very short with massive font as well, so I feel like it's going to be quite a quick whirlwind story. So I have this one, and then I've also got How to Survive a Horror Movie by Scarlett Dunmore. I got this one recently when I was up in Edinburgh. I like meta level like horror stories when there's kind of an acknowledgement of the horror genre, and this does that. It's a slasher film set in a school in which the main character can see the people that have been killed. It sounds quite fun. It's a YA. I think YA does horror quite well, especially Kaylin Bayron's You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight. I loved that so much. So I'm gonna pick out of these two. I'm gonna go into town a little bit just to get out. I'm just gonna sit in a cafe, have a little smoothie. I also want to go around a couple of charity shops today. So I go on holiday in a week today, which I'm so excited about, to Cyprus. And my sister has just kind of started to find her feet with reading. She's 12, she's just kind of delving into the kind of YA dystopian genre, and I really want to be able to find her a couple of books. So I'm gonna have a look in some charity shops and see if I can get her anything to bring with us. So that is the plan. I'm gonna pick which one. I'm kind of leaning towards Dolly I think. This one's kind of, the cover is so unsettling and weird, and we've already had one scary book for this vlog, so why not go for another one? Because I don't think this one is going to be the type to scare me, I just think this is going to be entertaining, whereas this one I feel like could be relatively creepy. I really enjoyed The Small Hand by Susan Hill. That one definitely gave me the creeps, so I have faith that this one will as well. I realised I said I was going to try and read this in this vlog as well, but I think given the size, I'm going to save this probably for the next book that I read, to be honest, because I do still really want to get to it like pretty quickly, but I did want to finish whatever book I read next in this vlog, and I don't think there's any chance of me being able to finish this in the time that I still have to be able to film this vlog. So I'm going to go for Dolly because it's a lot shorter, but this one I will be reading very soon. Alright, you're getting a little bit of a live reaction from me for something that's just happened, because I feel like I want to document this feeling in case it helps anybody else as well. So, God, I don't know how many years ago now, maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, the word ADHD, the term ADHD, was first mentioned to me when I was in some counselling for my OCD. They asked me how long I've been diagnosed with ADHD, and I was like, well, I don't have ADHD, and that was the first I'd ever heard of having symptoms that were linked to ADHD. And that kind of opened up a whole bag of worms for me to like poke about and look into. It took me a long time to do that poking about because I had a huge, big imposter syndrome flag above my head, but I finally did. I tried a couple of different routes and ended up going through Psychiatry UK, which is like the right to choose in the UK. So you basically can say you want to push through for this diagnosis or this assessment, as opposed to going through your GP because like maybe the GP route hasn't worked for you in the past. I can't really remember the exact process for it, but I basically pushed through to this right to choose process. And I was on a waiting list, I think for about 12 to 14 months. And I just had my assessment. I literally just had it. And they have diagnosed me with combined ADHD, both hyperactive and inactive, like combined together. I feel so validated. It's a weird feeling because, you know, I feel like in my own brain that there's been so much happening and there's so much mania constantly inside my own brain that it just at times feels so overwhelming, and like, if it's not ADHD, what is it? And I kept convincing myself that it wasn't ADHD and that it was imposter syndrome, and I didn't have X, Y, and Z that I was doing that made it not ADHD. And like, you know, it's a modern world, we're all so distracted so easily, we're all on our phones all the time, like how it's becoming so much more difficult to hold our concentration in this world. And it was all just that in my head, that's what it was. But I've just been told that's not what it is. And I just feel so validated, and I feel like so relieved. You know, I don't know what's going to change day to day for me. At the moment, I don't really feel like it's going to change all that much. I'm going to look at doing the coaching for it. I don't think I'm going to look at the medication at the moment. I want to see what the coaching is like first. And yeah, I feel really relieved. Really relieved to know there's an answer for the way that my brain has been feeling, and not just mania all the time. Like, I think I was 14 when I got diagnosed with OCD, and I didn't really have to go through much to get that diagnosis. It was quite an easy diagnosis, thankfully, at that time, and a very clear-cut one. And the fact that this has been such a long process has been confusing in my head as well, but yeah. I just wanted to document this. If you're thinking this in your own head and you want to get some answers, it's definitely a long wait list. But I think for me it's worth it now to have this feeling of like, wow, there is actually something I can call this feeling in my brain. Labels can be good and bad things, and they mean different things to different people. I like that I can label my OCD. I like that I can do that. It kind of compartmentalizes it for me and allows me to look at it in a different way. So the fact that I can now do this with ADHD, yeah, it feels like a little bit of a big deal. So I just wanted to document that. I am nearly finished reading Dolly, so I will talk to you about that in the next clip. Book about creepy dolls with a creepy doll on the cover. Turns out not actually that creepy of a book. I was very underwhelmed by this. Having now read 2 Susan Hill books, obviously I know there's a lot more to read and I would like to read more by Susan Hill. I think my current established thought about the way that Susan Hill writes is that it's very much about the build, about the introduction of the characters, about the setting, and I think you do need that in a good horror, especially a gothic horror. But then it's just so underwhelming when it actually gets to the point of the climactic point of everything coming together and it being creepy. I think that's, I need that delivery of like, you know, if you're gonna slow pace the build and you're gonna introduce us to everyone and make sure we really know the characters and the setting and the fact that everything's very creepy and foreboding and atmospheric, that's fine, I'm all for that. That's what I like about gothic horror. But then it needs to have a little bit more time with the thing that is unsettling and strange about the whole thing. I'm not saying that the climactic part needs to be like really intense, really scary, really dramatic. I think it's just the fact that as a reader you just spend barely any time in that part of the book, that it feels like you built and built and built for not really much gain at the end of it. It's a lot more on the characters and the atmosphere than it is about the actual plot, and I don't know, I felt a little bit disappointed by it. I thought it was going to be something that it wasn't. I thought it was going to be a lot more focused on the creepiness of this doll. We do get the establishing of the 2 characters in it, that we've got one who wants the doll for Christmas or her birthday. It's a doll she wants for her birthday. She doesn't get the right doll and she throws the wrong doll across the room and breaks it. She is a cow, do not like her. And then we have the other cousin who is a lot nicer, a lot more empathetic, and him we get a bit more on board with, and we see them as they get a bit older and how their relationship changes and how their lives take shape, and the foreboding sense of something coming is kind of following throughout the book, and then just, yeah, doesn't really hit, unfortunately. I'm gonna say like around a 2.5 to 3-ish, because I did like the writing style. I like Susan Hill's writing style, and I think she does write a really good atmosphere. Just the plot was not the one for me on this one, unfortunately. Feels kind of a weird, surreal day with the ADHD diagnosis thing after so many years of having this kind of thrown about as a term. Just to know today that that is the diagnosis I've received. It just still feels very surreal and wild to me that I actually have those answers. It feels really good. Like you know, my OCD has always been something that's just a part of me as a human being, and something that I've very much learned to live with since I was 14 when I first got the diagnosis. And I don't see it as a bad thing in the same way that I don't see the ADHD as a bad thing at all. I think that both OCD and ADHD for me contribute to who I am as a person. They contribute to how I've become as an adult and how I live my life and the jobs that I do, the hobbies that I have, you know, it all kind of feeds into who you are as a person. So I definitely don't see it as a bad thing. And it's just nice to have the diagnosis, just to know for me that was something that was important. So I hope that talking about it has made at least one person feel a little bit less alone if you're going through a similar thing. If you are on the waitlist at the moment and it feels like it's a never-ending waitlist, there is an end to the waitlist, and it will randomly happen and you'll be like, huh, okay. Obviously I did have this appointment booked today. It's not like they suddenly rang me out of the blue, but you get what I mean. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. I have very much enjoyed starting off my horror reading. I shall be reading a lot more horror as the month goes on. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one.